Tonight, we have 15 stories. As you can see in the title, all of these stories are allegedly true. Most of them involve stalkers, but there are a few that cover other real-life accounts as well. It serves as a grim reminder that terrifying things happen to ordinary people every day. I hope this video can serve as a reminder to always be safe out there because horror is always lurking. Supporting the video with a like is much appreciated. Subscribing if you're new is as well. If you have a story you would like to send into the channel, it can be sent to reddit.com/r/slumberreads. Stay safe out there, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. At first, I wasn't going to share this story, but now that I'm more over the situation. Before we start, judge me all you want, but I know I can be a bit stupid. It's only because I don't like to force myself to live on edge because of the sick people in this world. I live my life as freely and fearlessly as I possibly can. At the time of the story, I was 23. My birthday just passed the 29th of November, making me 24 now. I'm only 5'2" and about 170 to 180 pounds. I'm strong enough to help move furniture, but not strong enough to defend myself the way I would like. You would think as someone who survived an attempted sexual assault, I would learn some self-defense, but I've lost a lot of motivation and self-worth since. The abusive relationship really made it worse. That's beside the point. So to start, I won't get into major details, but I had just moved to Jackson, Tennessee from Miami, Florida because I had just gotten out of an extremely physically, emotionally, and mentally abusive relationship that lasted 3 years. About sometime in June, my current boyfriend and I had been doing a few trips. Pretty much every weekend we would visit a new hiking or waterfall area. Although there isn't a nightlife, Tennessee is amazingly beautiful. We went to this place called Narrows of the Harpeth. This was one of the underwhelming places we've been, but still relaxing. After we found a cool place to sit and swim after hiking for 2 hours, a few shots and one blunt later, it was time to make the hour trip back to Jackson. I put my shoes on and I slip on my dress back on, which is a little bit above the knee length. Like if I bend too far forward, my little bum would be on display. I own my body and sexuality, so showing some skin never really bothers me. And I don't really think about it because I just expect people to respect me as I respect them, and the way they dress. Anyways, on the way back to the car, I, being the tipsy dumbass I am, managed to trip and fall and scrape my leg pretty badly. It's actually scarred now. Anyway, I tell my boyfriend we need to go to Walmart once back in Jackson so I could thoroughly clean my wound with hydrogen peroxide and neosporin. My boyfriend says okay. An hour later, we are at Walmart. Mind you, it is only about 9 p.m., going on 10 p.m. Not late by any means. We get what I need, but because I am still tipsy and pretty high from the blunt, I finished in the car ride home. I get distracted so easily and remember that my boyfriend got me the wrong size case for my iPhone 11 Pro. He got the Max instead of just the Pro. I wanted an idea of what I could trade it for, and he wanted to look at some of the games as well as a gaming PC for me. So, I am happily tipsy and excited to find a new case, which, if you have ever been to Walmart, the cases in are never in order and often causes you to bend down to look at things. There was a man looking at the cases and I just said, "Excuse me, sorry, can I look at those cases you're standing in front of?" He just looked at me with a blank yet dirty look, nodded, and stepped over. As I am happily looking through the shelf about 5 minutes in, this lady, and what I assume are her 2 children, approach me. Mind you, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I am thrown off by how close she is to me, especially with her baby that looks no older than 9 months. I step back and she just grabs my arm and says, "Oh my god, I haven't seen you in forever. Look at that hair, wow." Her grip tightens. At this point, my heart is racing. My face gets so hot, and I am visibly scared. That's when my boyfriend says, "Everything okay, babe?" He looks at me equally concerned. I'm thinking to myself, does this lady know my mom? Who is she? Is she an old family friend I don't remember? Mind you, I'm originally from Ohio. We have family here, but I don't know any of my family that lives in Tennessee. My mom loves to brag about her kids, so I'm trying to shake this weird feeling, but her daughter keeps looking behind me, so I go to turn around and she goes, "No, don't turn around. Walk with me. Please, trust me." I don't know why, but I felt she was being genuine, and I just followed her. We step over to the side of the baby clothes, which is still in front of the electronics, and she says, "Baby, I am so sorry to scare you, but there are 3 men surrounding you. They went by the laptops, talked, and then I noticed the guy taking photos and videos of you when you were bent over looking at the cases. The other man was the tall guy next to you, and I don't know where the 3rd man went." All I can remember is this high-pitched ringing in my ears. My stomach flipped, and I felt like I was going to be sick. I never knew what people meant when they say, "Everything's slowed down." But in that moment, everything moved in slow motion and I was freaked out to the point that I have no clue what she said after. It was as if I blacked out for a moment, and then quickly came to realization that the family and my boyfriend were looking at me visibly panicked. I turned around and there he was. He was Hispanic, shorter than me, maybe about 5'1", but he was very much built, also looked to be about 40. The other man, who was white, about maybe in his mid-40s, was about 5'11". I'll never forget the dead blank rage in that Hispanic man's eyes, like his first meal in 5 days had been stolen from him, and he was ready to kill in order to have it back. That's when I saw the white man walk over to him. They said something. Both looked at me, looked back at each other, said something else, and started to walk slowly towards us. At that point, we all turned and headed for the registers. And that's when I thanked my lucky stars because there were about 3 cops at the front of the store. By the time I rudely pushed past people to get to the self-checkout, with tears in my eyes and frantically repeating "excuse me" to anyone who got in front of me, I looked back and saw them just standing there with the 3rd guy this time. My heart sank and I wanted to pass out at that moment. I guess it looked like I was going to the cops because they hightailed it once they saw me get close to the cops. Me being high as shit, and being a black woman, I wasn't going to chance the cops turning this around on me because I was simply stoned and tipsy. My only thought was, get to the car, get to the gun, don't stop, run. My boyfriend said he could barely keep up with me, and at one point I had grabbed his hand so tight, he had to force the grip off because it felt like I was going to crush his hands. And before anyone bashes my boyfriend, I don't expect a man to be my savior, but he isn't the angry, confrontational type. He is very calm and level-headed. He wouldn't even hurt a fly unless I asked him to get rid of it for whatever reason. I just knew I was the target, and I am putting him at risk. I knew they could easily jump him, and one of them could overpower me after taking him out. I probably looked crazy, half walking and running past everyone, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to become another missing sister. We made it to the car safely and peel out of there. I've never seen him drive so fast as he is beyond careful and would never speed. We sat at a Sonic for about an hour to make sure we weren't being followed. We recounted everything that happened. I just couldn't believe we both were too tipsy to notice that I had become prey in somewhere as simple as a Walmart. I've never felt so stupid and irresponsible in my life. I never want to experience that fear and panic in my life again. I didn't even get the chance to thank the lady who pretty much saved us. Sometimes we talk about it. What if the lady didn't see what that guy was doing? Even if we caught on. There were 3 and we only saw 2 at first. I think of the horrors. That night I had a nightmare that the men attacked us in the parking lot. Creepiest part of the dream was the 3rd man shoved me in the trunk, and I went to look at his face. All I could see was a featureless face. I woke up in tears that night, realizing I didn't get a clear look at the 3rd guy's face. It took me nearly a month to enter a Walmart again, since I have moved states and have only been to Walmart once since moving here. So to the creepy men that stalked me, upskirted me, and basically followed me, even when they knew I was around other people, I genuinely hope we never meet again because the gun I carry on my person now has 3 beautiful hollows that would enjoy meeting you all. This just went down like an hour ago. So I guess I found out why people don't pick up hitchhikers now. As I was driving from Texas to Cali, around an hour after I started my drive, I saw this guy with his dog on Route 66 in the middle of nowhere, at least 3 miles away from even the nearest gas station. It's cold and I wasn't in a rush, so I decided to ask him if he wanted a ride. Turns out he was trying to go to a city in Arizona that was only 20 miles off my route, so I offered to let him join the trip. He was chill, seemed normal, and looked like he cared for his dog. His original story was that he started walking in Mississippi after some bullshit reason he lost his job and everything went down the drain, so he walked and hitched to Texas, where he got stuck for 3 months, and was trying to get to his mom so she could help him out. I bought him food after asking if he ate, which he said he hadn't. Okay then. Good deed endorphins are hitting just right, and I feel like I'm doing a good thing. After around 200 miles, he tells me he just called his mom while I was refilling my gas, and apparently she went to LA for vacation, so he would just ride with me until I got to Cali. Okay, kinda weird and sporadic, but I didn't pay it too much mind. We chatted, and again seemed pretty normal until we got to Arizona. He starts bringing up Trump and how the election was stolen by pedophiles during the timeline. Okay, red flag, but I just asked him to drop it, as I don't like to talk about politics. He then asked if I could just drop him off at his, quote, 2 girlfriend's house, which he got after his mom passed and he inherited in a town of Arizona. He said he called beforehand and they are expecting him, after 3 months away. Also, he mentions almost like nothing during our earlier convo that he has mild schizophrenia. I started putting it all together. Oh shit. I don't think he even has a coherent goal of what he's doing. So when we get to Arizona finally, and we're on the last 10 miles of his now one girlfriend which he claims he loves, I start to wonder, am I about to drop a mentally ill man off 2 states away in the middle of nowhere, where it's about to get freezing temps tonight? Oh, and plot twist, he apparently didn't even have a phone. As we got to his girlfriend's house, I told him, hey, want me to wait here just in case she isn't home? Thinking I could at least talk him to letting me drop him off at a nearby homeless shelter or something. And exactly what I thought happened. I guess I got the wrong info, and she doesn't live there. My other family members live here though. Yeah, let's just go to Cali, see my mom. As he sat down in the car which I had been driving with him in for over 9 hours, I told him that maybe he isn't in the best mental state at the moment, and his mental illness could be playing tricks with him. He flipped his shit out of nowhere and said if I bring up his schizophrenia again, he would kill me. He wasn't threatening at all, so I simply said, bro, I don't feel comfortable driving you to Cali, but I also don't want to leave you and your dog in the freezing cold. Do you at least want me to drop you off at a homeless shelter? Fuck it, I'll just walk to Cali myself. He's set in the mountain town of Arizona where it's about to be freezing cold and he has no money, food, or water, with at least a 10 miles down a pretty uninhabited road, and I'm pretty sure he didn't have family that lived in the house that he went to, and he just left with his dog and I sat there dumbfounded, and then left as there was nothing more I could have done at that point. I don't know where you are, dude, but I hope you're safe. Get fucking help for you and your dog's sake. So this is short, but I thought why not post it. I'm currently 15 but was 13 at the time. I looked older than I am, so people confuse my age a lot. This happened almost 2 years ago while I was walking to the store. I lived 10 minutes from the Dollar General and went to get some food because I was hungry at around 5. The sun was starting to kinda set, but I went alone anyway. Like an idiot, I know. I get about halfway there when a blue car, a Ford I think, slows on the highway and calls to me to come closer. Like an idiot, I walk back a bit but not too much. I don't remember what he said, but it was something along the lines of, get in the car. Me freaking out, I just start walking again and he pulls into a church parking lot I was walking by. He just parks there yelling at me to come here without getting out. I was wearing wedge sandals, so I stopped, took them off, and bolted. I ran behind the church and walked toward the front where the car was still parked. He never got out, so I didn't see his face, but after about 5 or 10 minutes, he finally left. I don't know why, but I decided to still go to the store. I was still jumpy, so I bought my stuff and left. On my way back, I didn't see the car again, thankfully. When I got home, I told my family, but they all brushed it off, saying I was probably just overreacting. I didn't walk to the store again for 4 months, and I still get pretty paranoid if I see a person walk in the same direction as me for a while. This happened when I was 13. I'm a girl, and in the 8th grade, and the middle school I went to was about a 15-minute walk, so not very far. For context, my older brother and I grew up in East LA in a small house that had a metal gate, and both the front and back doors had a black metal screen door and a wooden door. During the day, we would always leave the wooden door open and have the black metal door closed and locked. Except this day. That day I came home from school and had about an hour before anyone else would be home. I was really thirsty, so I rushed inside, grabbed a drink, and sat down at the kitchen table, which was about 10 feet away from the front door. I heard the metal gates open and was surprised as no one should have been coming home that early. I got up to see who it was, and I saw an older man, probably in his 60s. He had short white hair and a long white beard. He was wearing an AC/DC t-shirt, torn jeans, and sunglasses. I remember thinking he looked a lot like Santa Claus, but dirty and creepy. He knocked on the middle screen door and asked if my parents were home. I was a dumb kid and said they weren't. He got a smile on his face and said that he collected donations for needy children. I said sorry, but I didn't have any money. He said sometimes children donated old toys. I said I didn't have any old toys to donate. He insisted that I must have some toys I didn't want anymore. He was beginning to creep me out, and I noticed I hadn't locked the door when I came inside. I tried to keep my cool as I slowly and very carefully locked the door. I kept him talking so he wouldn't notice. A minute or two later, he wouldn't leave, so I decided I would pretend to check for toys, and then say I didn't have any so he would hopefully leave. I told him I would go check, and as I turned and took a few steps down the hall, I clearly heard him yank at the door trying to open it. I didn't want him to know I had heard it, so I kept walking down the hall and into a room. I didn't have a cell phone, and the only phone in the house was in the kitchen. I thought about what to do and decided to stick with my plan. After about 2 or 3 minutes, I walked out hoping he had left. Nope. Creepy Santa Man was still there. I told him sorry, but I didn't find anything. He sighed and said all right. He would check another time. He left and walked across the street. I watched from the kitchen window, peeking through the blinds as he just stood there staring at my house for about 45 minutes. My brother and a few of his friends finally came walking down the street. As my brother came inside and his friends kept walking down the street, the man walked around the corner and disappeared. I told my brother what happened and he walked outside to look, but creepy Santa Man was long gone. When my mom came home, we told her what happened and she called the police, but they said to call back if he showed up again. Thankfully, he never did show up. I was 18 years old and decided to take a gap year to reflect a bit on my studies and to have new experiences. I ended up going a year abroad in Toronto, Canada, to learn a bit of English because it's always useful. I contacted an education company that put me in contact with my foster home, and soon enough, I was ready to leave. It was the very first time I was traveling alone and that far from my country. I'm from Europe, so I was quite stressed out in the beginning. But as time passed and I began to make friends, I started to feel quite at ease very quickly with my new environment, and fell in love with the city. It wasn't rare that I left and wandered a bit on my own to explore new places, but when I was alone, I always came back before it was dark because I wasn't too comfortable. Plus, being a girl, the people I was living with didn't want me to be outside too long at night. One day I decided to pay a visit to my first foster family that was living in North York, and I was currently living in Scarborough with my third family. I had to change family 4 times and ended up living in different areas of the city throughout the year. So I obviously took the subway, To give you an idea of the length of the events, the trip was supposed to take something like 1 hour, but with the traffic and the recurrent problems on the lines, it lasted 2 hours or so. I first took the subway on the Green Line at Kennedy, then changed at St. George to take the Yellow Line and go north to Shepherd West, and then get out and take a bus to finally arrive at their house. So I basically had to go from east to north, passing by the center. I invite you to look up a map of Toronto subway so you can clearly understand my path. So I'm walking for the subway at Kennedy. It was in the middle of the afternoon, so everything was very crowded, but from the corner of my eye, I see a man kind of looking at me. I ignore it, thinking that it wasn't anything and that I was probably just paranoid, but I wasn't really comfortable, so I just put my headphones on and stared at my phone. The subway arrives and everybody gets in. I found somewhere to sit, which is a miracle considering how crowded the subway was, and just minded my own business. After a few minutes, I stopped looking at my phone, wanting to look outside because we were passing on a bridge and I really liked the view. But as soon as I turned my head, I saw the same man standing up and staring directly at me. When he saw that I saw him, he smiled at me. I was a bit concerned, but not scared. Because even though I had been there for only 3 months, I knew that there were a lot of weird people in this city. Not wanting to be rude, I smiled back and then stared at my phone, not wanting to meet his eyes again. I really began to worry when the subway arrived at St. George. The subway stops, I get out, start walking to take the subway on the Yellow Line, and then wait for it to come. When I turn my head to see when he's supposed to arrive, I see the same man as before, still staring and smiling at me. I'm not smiling at him anymore and quickly avoid eye contact. After a few minutes, the subway finally arrives. I jump in it and change wagon, wanting to be as far away from him as possible. Time passes and I don't see him in the crowd near me, so I'm a bit better. Also, I remember feeling silly for thinking that someone was following me. The subway finally arrives at Shepherd West and I start walking to catch my bus. Doing so, I'm reaching for my pass but make it fall on the ground. So I stop, pick it up, and who am I seeing when I get up? The creepy dude, walking towards me, staring and smiling again. I changed direction and started walking faster, hoping to reach the bus stop and having more people around me. I get there, but he gets there as well and I can feel him looking at me. At this point, I was completely freaked out, not only because I was scared as hell, but also because I didn't want him to know where my foster parents were living, considering that the bus stop was really close to their house. The bus arrived and we all got in. There weren't any sitting places, so I went standing close to the door. That's when I thought of a way out. I knew that people were going to press the button for my stop because a lot of people were going off there, so I waited patiently for my stop. Someone else pressed the button as I anticipated, and I waited as a maximum of people went out of the bus. Then, when the bus started to close the doors, I jumped off of the bus and started walking in a random direction, so if the creepy dude was looking at me, he wouldn't know where I was going. I was very lucky that the bus driver didn't reopen his doors. After walking for a bit, I turned around and started heading to the house of my foster parents, relieved that it was finally over. I spent a few hours there and decided not to talk about my recent experience. I didn't want them to worry or to drive me home, them being quite old and tired most of the time. Time passed, and I decided to head home. I thanked my family, wished them a happy evening, and went outside to the bus stop across the street. After a few minutes, the bus arrived. I get in, look around for somewhere to sit, and then I froze. The man was sitting in the back of the bus. I didn't move for a few seconds. I went to sit next to a lady in the front of the bus, completely panicked. I was wondering how he could have ended up in the same bus as me. It couldn't be bad luck. He followed me for 2 hours before that. At the time I had no idea, but now, I think that when I got out of the bus, he got out at the next stop. That isn't far away from mine. So we can kind of see if there's people waiting at the next stop, and waited for me to take the bus again. That day, I was wearing a bright yellow mustard color hoodie, so I think he knew it was me, even from a distance. The bus started driving and I felt helpless because it was clear to me that I wasn't paranoid and that this man clearly wanted something out of me. The big mistake I made here wasn't to alert the people on the bus. They could have helped me get out of the situation by scaring the guy off, but as I said, I was panicked and wasn't thinking clearly. When we arrived at the station, I almost started running down the stairs to try and catch the subway, but arrived a little bit too late. He arrived a few seconds after and went to sit down on a stone bench, still looking and smiling at me. I was desperately thinking of a way out of this situation. Then the subway arrived, and I think I've never had that much luck in my whole life. When the doors opened, I saw two of my friends, one of them being a guy that is quite built, sitting on the wagon. They told me afterwards that they were going downtown to go to the gym together. I got up and ran to them, explaining the situation that I was in. The creepy dude went and sits close to us in the wagon, and when he saw that I knew them, he got out at the next stop. I never saw him again afterwards, and I never wished to experience something similar in my life ever again. I had never been followed before that, and this experience had taught me to always have my keys in my fingers when I'm walking alone, even now. So, I used to work as a personal trainer at a very familiar gym in my city to help pay for college. The neighborhood this gym was located in has two other gyms across the street, so we would have a lot of clients changing from place to place. I worked the night shift since I got out of class at about 6 p.m. and worked from 6:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Usually a lot of guys would go for experimental classes at night, and I was known for working with the bodybuilders. At around 9 p.m., this guy with a very arrogant posture walked in for an experimental class. The secretary immediately sent him to me, and I was more than happy to help him out, although I was pretty sure he already worked out and needed no help whatsoever. Weird, but okay. Throughout the whole hour, this guy would ask me very personal questions. Where do you live? Are you single? What's your shoe size? What the fuck? Etc. And I was working. I just politely tried to keep our conversation focused on training and exercises and stuff. When the class was over, he looked at me and said, "We'll call him CD for creepy dude. M for me." CD. "Can I have your number?" M. "I'm sorry, but I have a fiance." It was true. CD. "Are you sure? I don't usually take no as an answer." M. Already wishing I wasn't at work so I could just walk away. "Yeah. I am here just to help you exercise properly. Nothing else." Then this guy puts his finger at my face and goes, "CD, when I get my gun, you won't say no to me." And walked out of the door. For almost a month, I needed to ask a male coworker to walk with me to the parking lot, late at night, because this guy would be at the corner waiting for me to get out. He would stare at me and smile and wait for me to leave. Later, I found out he was at the gym across the street and took my car's license plate. I had to ask one of my clients, that was a cop, to scare him out. Until this day, I can't get his smiling face out of my head. The story I'm about to tell you happened 3 days ago, and I have never been this scared in my life. I'm a French student doing a master's in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. I live alone in an apartment in a building where there are only students. I'm 22, enjoying life peacefully. To give you a bit of context, I live in a calm, good neighborhood. The only noises I'd hear are the tram or parties in the building since a lot of students are there. One night around 10 p.m., I hear a knock on my door. I live on the 3rd floor, and to get to my front door, you have to open the main door, which needs a key. Then you need to open the door to my corridor with the same key. So people who want to come to my door must have the key, call me, or ring at the door so I could open the doors for them from my apartment. Nothing of this happened. I just hear a knock on my door. I usually open the door without a second thought, whether it's my landlord or a neighbor asking for something. As I told you, I feel pretty safe in the building, and I could also take care and defend myself in case anything happened. But this time, for some reason, I had a bad feeling about this. I didn't move at first. I thought the person would just leave. I'd finish my assignments. However, the knocking continued for 30 seconds. I said, "Yeah?" in English. The person knocking doesn't say anything. I say in English again, "Who is it?" The voice answers in English. "It's Uber Eats." Which is weird because Dutch always speak in Dutch, and I recognize the voices and accents of everyone on my floor who have the key to access the floor. So it wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't my landlord. It was somebody claiming to come from Uber Eats. But the issue is, I didn't order anything from Uber Eats that day. The voice was unfamiliar, in case it's a prank or a neighbor pulling a joke. It was also a deep voice, at least 40 and probably a smoker. I replied that, "I didn't order anything. You must have it wrong." After a few seconds, the knocking continues and the same voice says, "I'm pretty sure you did. I have an order under your name." I start panicking. I look around and pick up a knife in case he breaks the door because the knocking was getting a bit louder. I checked if my door is locked. It wasn't. I was literally 10 centimeters away from him. My front door was the only thing keeping him from me. I'm glad it doesn't open from the outside. You need a key to open it, even if it's not locked. I step back and I ask again, "What's the name?" He seems to be thinking for a few seconds. Then a final knock occurs. It was loud, and it translated some anger or frustration. Finally, I hear him going down the emergency stairs right next to my apartment. The steps are heavy, and the person was clearly in a hurry. I don't know what he wanted or what would have happened to me if I had opened the door as I casually do. I still haven't understood how he got through the 2 doors. And why did he come specifically to the last apartment on the 3rd floor? Did he try others before? I posted a post about it on the WhatsApp group we have in the building. No one saw anything suspicious. No one opened the door for anyone. Anyway, I'm lucky for my instinct telling me not to open the door. I'm glad I listened. This happened right before quarantine hit where I live. A couple days before Christmas in 2019. I, 18 female at the time, was home from college visiting my family. 2 of my 3 younger brothers, 14 and 11, mom's boyfriend, Brian, who lives with us, and my 3 dogs were all home at the time. For context, my house has a separate garage from the rest of the house that we converted to a hangout room. Put carpeting and a TV and a couch in there. My brother plays PS4 in there. The rest of the house has floor-to-ceiling windows so you can see the backyard from nearly any room in the house. This occurred in broad daylight, likely around 2 p.m. I had just gotten home from lunch and I was FaceTiming my now ex-boyfriend in my room when my mom and Brian came into my room asking me if one of my friends was in the garage. Confused, I said no, and they immediately ran out and grabbed my brothers and dogs, corralling them into the front hallway. They grabbed their phones and called the police stating that there was a 20 to 25-year-old male, obviously drugged out, who had barricaded himself in our garage, sitting on the couch watching TV. Then they explained to me and my brothers that he had locked himself in the garage, gone into our fridge, and was eating our food and drinking my parents' wine while sitting on the couch watching daytime television. He also had grabbed a lantern, sleeping bag, and an axe from Brian's tools. Now, before the police get there, Brian grabbed a baseball bat and walked around the garage to the window. As me and my brothers watched from the window inside, he banged on the window, and the gentleman inside screamed at him, "I'm waiting for my girlfriend. She'll pull up soon," and flashed the axe, according to Brian's recounting. Finally, the police arrived and subdued our new friend, the axe-wielding druggie in our garage. Not much happened after that, and the police took my parents' statements and swiftly left with the man in our garage. Me and my brothers were okay, and quickly updated the last brother, who's 12, on what he had missed when he came home. In the spirit of a 12-year-old boy, he was said he missed such a wild event that had occurred in our sleepy suburb. A few weeks later, the police sent my mother the information about the case, particularly the gentleman's name. My mother, the apparent super sleuth, decided to research the last name in any public criminal records of the man in our garage. While the only charges she found for this man were a few drug misdemeanors, she did find something interesting about a relative, who we believe is his father. Now, this man's last name is not common, and also it is hyphenated. so it is appropriate to assume relation between these individuals, especially since these crimes occurred in the same regional area. Apparently, the man in our garage's father or relative had killed, shot to death, a few people at a convenience store in order to celebrate his 21st birthday. Now, I know that nobody is exactly their parents or relatives, but this man was in his 20s when he broke into our garage and took an axe, so it worries me that there could be some undiagnosed mental health issues in his family, and this man was clearly unstable. This happened just about an hour ago, so my memory is fresh. First off, I'm living very rural, in a small village with maybe 10 to 15 houses, but close to the highway. You can drive there within maybe 5 minutes, and also about 10 minutes away from the town. If you cross the street, it takes you about a 10-minute walk to reach the forest. First Christmas Day. In the afternoon, my partner and I decided to go for a little digestive walk, as we were really stuffed from all the food. It was about 5 p.m. and already dark when we left, and we had a big and bright LED flashlight with us. I also took my camera and my flash, as I love taking pictures of nature at night. We decided to walk on a little country road towards the forest and then turn right, following a small graveled cycle track close to the forest border, which connects our village and the next, maybe 15 to 20 minutes walk between villages. In the middle part of the track, you have to walk through a small bit of forest. It's rather dark and the trees are very high and quite dense. When we entered, I saw our flashlight reflecting on something and recognized a car being parked there on the side of the track, close to the trees. This struck me as odd, as cars are not allowed to drive there and the path is very narrow and hidden, so I was a bit cautious. My partner pointed the light inside of the car, and it seemed to be empty. I also noticed the windows were frozen, so it must have been parking there for a while. A bit in front of the car, I spotted a tree with an intriguing structure, and I asked my partner to point the flashlight towards it, so I could focus better and photograph it with my flash. After I took a few images, my partner told me, there's someone standing behind us in the middle of the road. He's looking right at us. Nobody was following us the whole way. I kept looking around and behind us occasionally, because at this time in the evening, and close to the border of the forest, there are boars sometimes, and it's mating season, so they are more aggressive than usual. Indeed, there was a man standing behind us, staying out of the flashlight's reach. He wasn't saying anything, just standing there and facing us. At first, I thought he might be startled, as it may seem a bit weird if someone's just taking photos around your car. It was not even legal to drive on that path with the car. I decided to get up and confront him from a distance, explaining to him that I was just taking photos of that tree. He didn't react, and still just stood there. I then went on to ask him if he needed some light, and he replied that this wasn't necessary. It was odd, but I was still calm, sure about there being a normal explanation for his behavior. Nonetheless, my partner and I decided to just get the fuck out and follow the path leading to the next village. It was maybe 5 to 7 minutes until we reached it. I remember the letters on his license plate. Not the numbers, though, unfortunately. And Googled it, and it turned out that he was from a city about 6 hours away from our village. Mind you, the country I live in is in a very strict lockdown right now, so you are only allowed to travel, even by car, if you have very urgent reasons. After we reached the first lantern on the next village, we looked back and observed the car driving a bit out of the forest, turning around and going back inside. I was able to see that he parked there again and turned the lights off. He didn't leave the forest. We then went home on a much longer way than initially intended, as I didn't want to go back there for obvious reasons. Our flashlight battery died on the way, and my phone battery was low, so I didn't want to call the police back then. But I called them as soon as I arrived home and gave them all the details. Big regret that I didn't memorize the whole license plate, but it was just so surprising that I seriously didn't think about it. Also, it only occurred to me as really strange when I thought about the frozen windows and that he could possibly have walked behind us, plus him having no light and not responding. He did seem to be sneaking up on us when I sat down to take the photo. I think I was very lucky to have my partner, the camera, and the bright light with me. I don't want to imagine what could have happened if I was alone. Background. This all took place outside my home at the time, which was on the literal last block of a major city, right across the street from the beach. The building was framed on 4 sides by the beach, the woods, a construction site, and a few other sleepy houses, as well as a Muni line. Think the subway, but above ground. It's the very last stop on the Muni, so unless you catch it the right time of day, or at the height of tourist season, the area is basically empty on the sidewalks. The house itself has an initial patio door, which doesn't always fully close if you don't slam it, and then an entry area with a staircase and leading up to a second locked door that leads to the apartment. Experience number 1. I got home from work one day at about 9 p.m. and immediately get into a small spat with my roommates. After about 30 minutes, I decided to leave the house to cool off. I'd planned on sitting on the porch outside, but as I looked across the street at the ocean, I decided it would be more peaceful there. I had never really been to the beach at night, for safety, but as I looked at the well-lit parking lot and no one in sight, I decided it would be alright. In the 1 block span from the beach to my home, there was a little wooded path that started on my street and dumped you at the crosswalk for the beach. It also intersected with another pathway that took you down the coast. I sat for a bit. Everything was fine, and after a while I started the 1-minute walk back on the little path. All of a sudden I look up and see a man walking briskly on the intersecting path, looking right at me. I speed up a bit and try to ignore him, and as we hit the section where the 2 paths intersect, I end up being about a foot away from him. He calls out to me, "Hey, I want to talk to you." I ignore him, and after a few more steps he reaches out his hand and grabs part of my hair, saying, "Hey, come here." I immediately yank my hair out of his hand and book it the last block. Sprinting to my house, and I can hear him running behind me. I turn the corner sharply and am briefly out of sight. Luckily, the initial entryway to the patio had been left open by accident, and I run in through the door and slam it shut. I hear his footsteps stop outside, followed by silence. As I go upstairs and look through our front window, I see him walking away into the construction site. Experience number 2. I had a friend that lived a couple blocks away from where I was, along the same stretch of beach. After hanging out one day, I decided to head back home around sunset. I've walked this route many times and it's just barely light outside still. Only a 5-minute walk, so I figure I'll be home before dark. As I cross the intersection from their house, I notice a white van parked on the corner that is not usually there, covering a little garden I like to look at on my way back. I can just barely make out 2 people in the front seat. I think, odd. Okay, whatever, and pull out my pepper spray. I cross the street, passing the van, and now have my back to it. As soon as my foot hits the pavement on the other side of the street, I hear the van start up. I turn my head just slightly and see them, illegally, turning onto the street where I am now walking. They creep the van beside me slowly, just behind me but within my peripheral vision. I decide to stop and let them pass. I pause and pretend to be looking at my phone and see them stop driving immediately. This was a nope from me and I broke into a run, the van following me to a small vintage motel about 1 building away. Then I notice I was in an open entrance courtyard, and so I approach it. I turn quickly into the yard and run up to an archway entry for a unit. I stop at the first few steps, catching my breath, and I open my phone front camera to use as a sort of mirror to see what the van is doing. They had backed up to the entry of the motel and sat there for a few minutes. Then, the one on the passenger side opened the door and started walking towards the motel, his phone flashlight on, and I immediately pulled my own phone back, listening for his footsteps and readying myself to start banging on the motel door, hoping someone is inside. I wait in the silence for a long time, long enough for it to get dark. I finally look out again and both the man and van are gone. I call an Uber to take me the last 2 blocks. Sorry, Uber driver. Never saw them again. Experience number 3. I have a friend over, and we want to dab, a form of smoking weed. It's about 10 p.m. My roommates don't like dabbing in the house because of the smell, so he and I go to his car parked out front. We're in there, having a good time when I notice a person walking down the block, pulling on car door handles. I notify him, and we watch as that same person comes up to his car and yanks on his back door. He honks his horn, and they back up for a minute, then walk up to his driver window and knock on the window, making a motion to roll it down. Just as I am about to tell him don't, he rolls down the window a bit. The person is clean and normally clothed, and asks what day it is, and then what time it is, to which my friend answers. Then they stand there and stare at us as he tries to usher them away, even offering them money. Without saying anything, they walk away down the block, and once they reach the intersection between the construction site and woods, they roll their head back up to the sky and just start screaming at the top of their lungs as they back away out of sight. I take this opportunity to dart back inside my house as my friend watches, making sure to close the patio door. A few hours later, one of my roommates comes home very drunk, and as we figured later, they failed to make sure the patio door shut all the way. Morning time comes and I wake up in an empty apartment. I open my phone and have a singular message from my roommates from 3 hours ago, stating that when they left for work this morning, there was a person they didn't know sleeping inside the patio area. They thought it was a drunk person who lived in the neighborhood and entered the wrong house by mistake, and evidently did not find it enough of a reason to call me or wake me up. I immediately go to the entry of our apartment, pulling the door open fast. To my surprise, the person who had been talking to us in the car the night before is laying casually across my staircase, fiddling with something. I scream "hey" loudly, and they immediately hop up and run out my patio door. I run down the stairs after them and open the door. They are standing across the street, just smiling at me and giggling. They then give me a little wave and run off. I close the door hard and go back up the steps to see what items they had left. Sitting on the steps was a few coins, some weird wire-type objects. Think a bobby pin after you've bent it into a straight line, a lighter, and a pocket knife. Never saw them again. To give some context, I was 14 when this happened, and I was with my best friend Holly, who was 17. We are both very small ladies, and obviously at the time, very young. It was Friday night, and Holly and I went to her friend's place for a little get-together. Despite both being underage, we drank way too much, and by the time we decided to go home at midnight, we weren't very steady on our feet. We lived in a small city in Canada, and for the most part, it was pretty safe. I was spending the night at Holly's place, and as we were drunk, we took the short bus ride home. The closest bus stop was about 1 kilometer from her place. The bus stop is a park and ride, so there was a well-lit parking lot, and the rest of the walk was on a quiet residential road with no street lighting. We walked this route heaps and didn't think twice about walking it on this particular night. We got off the bus, both still drunk and enjoying our walk back to her place. We walked through the parking lot, which had a few cars parked, and started into the darkness. Everything was pretty ordinary thus far, but I noticed Holly got quiet and started to walk faster. I figured she was sobering up and keen to get home, so I started walking faster to keep up. She looked at me, seeing I was oblivious to my surroundings, and told me she thought someone was following us. I looked back to see a person walking behind us, but a decent distance away. No one else got off the bus with us, and no one was around when we got off the bus, so we reckon this person came from the parking lot. We both started to sober up real quick, but tried to rationalize the situation against our gut instincts. We looked behind us every few seconds to gauge the situation, and could see the person was gaining on us. We could now make out that the person was a full-grown male. We were both starting to panic and run scenarios through our head when Holly told me we need to run because he has a bat. We both started running, and as I did, I looked behind me to see this dude did have a baseball bat. I can't remember if he was running too, or just speed walking, but he was still following us. I remember feeling this horrible urgency and panic overcome me, and survival instincts kick in. Holly and I both knew we could not stop running until we were inside with the door locked. I know from running track that if you look behind you while running, you slow down. Against all my instincts, I didn't look behind me, and after what seemed like ages, we made it home. We ran into the house shaking and crying, and luckily Holly's dad was awake. We told him what happened, and he had us call the cops while he got in his car. He wanted to drive the road to see if he could find the dude and get a better description for the police, but he didn't see them. I'm not sure when we lost him or if he followed us all the way home, but nothing ever came of the situation. It's been over 10 years since this went down, and I try not to think about what could have happened, but the thought of a grown dude waiting in his car with a baseball bat for vulnerable people to walk by gives me goosebumps. The college I attended was in a very small town in eastern Washington. So eastern, in fact, it was only about 10 minutes from the Idaho border. But that's not really important here. There was not much to do in Pullman, other than drink and go to parties. I had never really been much of a party goer myself, so I was one of the few not spending every single weekend getting hammered. One of those weekends, I had spent pretty much the whole day in my dorm room and was antsy for some social interaction. I hadn't done much that day other than study, and I wanted to at least get out of my dorm. I texted my best friend at the time and we decided we would go to the football stadium to look at the stars. The football stadium, at the time, remained open 24/7, and at the time we left, it was around 12 a.m. so the stadium lights had shut off and we had a beautiful view of the stars. We walked to the stadium in great spirits and had a wonderful night talking and laughing. On the way back, everything changed. By the time we were leaving back to our dorm rooms, it was a little after 2 in the morning. We were walking down the main road and we had seen a Jeep approaching. Nothing too unusual. However, the lights were off. So my best friend, not knowing how to SSDGM, used her hands to make a flashing signal at them telling them their lights were off. As soon as she did this, they got only a short distance past us when we heard them slam on their brakes and turn around, driving up the wrong lane of traffic to come back. We were right by a sky bridge at the time this happened, which had stairs leading up to the bridge. We ducked behind the stairs, but the Jeep was driving back and forth, looking for us. We ended up having to play a sick game of duck and hide on the stairs until the Jeep finally parked. When they did, we had gotten to the top of the stairs and laid ourselves flat on the sky bridge, hiding in the shadows. We had a clear view of them, and as soon as we were flat on the ground, we see 5 men get out of the Jeep. Not just that, but they each had a baseball bat. These men were checking the bushes and surrounding areas, again, looking for us. I called the police and quietly explained the situation. After about 10 minutes of the men searching and whistling and swinging their bats around, they finally left. Not long after the police showed up, but there wasn't much they could do but to offer us a ride home in their cruiser. I have no idea what those men's intentions were, but I am so glad I never found out. I worked at a maximum security facility and drove about 45 minutes each way. As I was driving to work one day, someone pulled out behind me and started acting a little aggressive. I ignored it, thought I was being paranoid, but he kept following me. The odds of someone following me for 25 minutes and making all of the same turns had to be 1,000,000 to 1. I started to get nervous when I tried pulling into the side entrance. It was under construction, so I did a U-turn. Watching this man do the exact same thing, I went further down the road and entered the main entrance. This guy followed me through the campus, where there are 3 big brick buildings, all surrounded by giant steel double gates, 3 rows of fences, all with collapsing razor wire. He followed me into the parking lot and came up to my car. I rolled down the window and he said something to me. I have no memory at all of what he said. Adrenaline was pumping. Apparently I was in fight or flight mode because I remember jumping out and spraying him with pepper spray. He pulled a small knife out on me and I sprayed him again. He put the knife away and started just windmill punching me. I blocked it, then sprayed the remaining. Thankfully, my only physical damage was a bit of blowback from the pepper spray. Another staff member snuck up and called the police and gave them his tag number. He drove down 2 hills and across a field and 2 parking lots, almost hitting the safety sergeant in the process, but he got away. Apparently, either the tags were stolen from a vehicle in Florida, I'm in New York, and they never found him. I literally have no idea who he was or why he came after me. This mess screwed with my PTSD bad for months. So I'm a bartender at a gentleman's club. Our uniform, if you can call it that, is a very short, skimpy black dress and black bra. Due to my uniform being the way it is, I do my best to not have to go out in public directly after work due to dirty looks or perverted comments that I just don't have time for. Back before the current state of the world, I had just gotten off work. It was around 2:30 a.m. and I had decided to run to my local Walmart to grab some dog food and other household items I needed, thinking they really wouldn't be anyone else besides staff there. I ran in with a jacket to try and be a little modest and went directly to the pet aisle. There was a guy stalking the shelves. I gave a wave and smiled and proceeded looking for my dog's brand of food. I grabbed a 20-pound bag and the stalker asked if I needed help. I'm not really a small girl, but I have a slight frame. Like I'm tall, but have a small waist. I told him I was fine, but thanked him and headed to the grocery section. I was in the freezer section when my stalker, showed up again, this time with another guy. They were just standing there watching me decide which pizza to pick, and when I turned to leave, the stalker asked again if I needed help. I told him no, but thanked him again and smiled. I then made my way to the checkout aisles. On my way out, I saw a man heading out about 10 feet behind me. I quickly walked to my car, threw my purchases in the passenger side, and jumped in and locked my doors. I was worried he would try and talk to me, and I just wanted to go home. I felt dumb after realizing the guy went to his own car and wasn't even near me, and started my 15-minute drive home. I was about halfway home when I noticed this black car behind me taking all the same turns as me. I live in a rural area, and while it's possible he lived nearby, there aren't many people that take these roads. I turned a road after mine, and he made the same turn. It leads to a dead-end road with a cow farm, so I knew he was following me. I get to the end of the road and do a quick 3-point turn and speed back out to the road. He's still behind me. I called my boyfriend and told him what was going on and that I didn't want to drive home where he would know where we lived, and asked him to meet me at the Walmart. I speed the whole way there, hoping a cop is sitting somewhere and will pull us over. Black car guy is still on my ass. I pull into the Walmart parking lot and park under a street lamp. Black car pulls into the spot across from mine, and I'm just freaking out. About 15 seconds later, I see my boyfriend's truck and he pulls, more like drifts, up next to me. Asks if I'm okay, and I point to the car. Now, my boyfriend is not a small man. He's about 6'4" and huge, like his arms are the size of my head. He's very intimidating, but a very quiet and kind man. He gets out of his truck and starts to walk over to the car and yells to them, "You need to talk to her or something?" Guy in the black car takes off. So I don't know if it was the man that was hanging out with the stalker or what, but I don't go out after work anymore. I had just transferred schools and I took a new position as a high school librarian. There was a little snack bar run by the cafeteria workers in the student center. Bill was the guy who manned the register for the snack bar. He was a short man in his late 50s. He always had a smile for anyone who came to visit. He really loved when the adults of the building came by to get food or drinks, and he would try to start a conversation with anyone who would stop to talk. He seemed sad and lonely. Over the first few months of stopping by there for my morning tea, he would always ask me questions. I was in a serious relationship at this time. I had been with my partner for 6 years and we had a child together. He seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. I never got any weird vibes from him. He seemed like a sweet father or grandfather type figure. Over the summer between my first year of working and my second year, my boyfriend and I broke up. I didn't talk about it at work when I could help it. It was painful to talk about because we had been together for so long and had a child. I was trying to date online. I was on the main ones: Facebook dating, Tinder, Plenty of Fish, and Bumble. I live in a pretty small town, so the same men were on the same apps. I went on a few dates, but overall the entire process was a disaster. I only stayed on the apps for the first fall semester of my second year, and then deleted all of them to remain single. During this time, Bill's attention started to change. He would get very excited when I came down to get my morning drink. He knew about my breakup and would ask me how dating was going. I did not remember telling him that I was single, but I assumed I must have just let it slip at some point in our conversation. I would come back in the mornings and tell him about all of my terrible dates. I remember telling him that I was giving up on dating. He tried to hold my hand, to try and comfort me. I immediately jerked my hand back. I told him I was fine with my life and that I won't date again until I am happy with just myself. Each morning that I went back, I noticed that he kept trying to find excuses to touch me. I had hair on my clothes, or he needed to fix the alignment of my jacket. I started to get very creeped out from his attention. I stopped going down to get a drink. I told him I didn't have time in the morning anymore because the library was getting more kids needing me to check out books before school started. Since I wasn't coming down to see him, he started coming down to see me. He started by just bringing me tea. If I was not at my desk, he would leave it for me to find. At first, I didn't mind it too much. Things just appeared and I didn't have to fake a smile when he came by. After a few weeks, it stopped being just tea. He started to bring me food, too. "We just got a shipment of oranges in," he said. "I picked out the very best ones for you. I know how much you love oranges." The gifts became bigger and bigger, until he was bringing me full meals from the cafeteria. I started trying to think how I could get this to stop while also being polite. I had to be nice, right? Over time, I couldn't even eat the food. I would give it away or trash it the moment he left it in the room. The next time he came down with his arms filled with free food for me, I told him that I didn't want him to bring me anything because I was on a diet and I was bringing my own food to school. "You're just perfect the way you are," he said with a big smile. I replied with a thank you. Why do I feel the need to be nice to creepy people? When he would try to bring me down food, I would thank him and remind him that I did not want any more food. When he would come in and I wasn't at my desk, I would duck down and hide until he left. The students started to ask what was going on. I am a grown woman, the person in charge of these students, and I'm hiding on the floor behind a stack of books to avoid talking to him. The students even said that they did not like him. The students had nicknamed him the Troll. It was such a fitting name. Over time, he understood that I didn't want any more food from him. I had a month of glorious silence. No visits, just awkward waves in the hallway if I passed by. And my second year as a librarian ended. When the third year started back up, I had a lovely summer without a thought of him. I walked into the library on the first day with a present on my desk. I opened the package. It is a coffee tumbler and a gift card to Starbucks. No name or card to say who gave it to me. I wasn't sure it was him, so I went down to ask. He said that he wanted to buy me something special and to have my school year start off with a smile. I accepted the gift and thanked him. I'm not saying no to some free drinks. I shouldn't have taken it. I know that now. The gifts didn't stop. At least once a week, he would bring me something. Each gift got more expensive and I became increasingly more uncomfortable. By October, I told him to stop. Do not bring me anything. Do not buy me anything. It makes me uncomfortable and I will not be buying him anything in return. He didn't listen. He kept bringing me things. I knew he couldn't afford this on a cafeteria worker's salary, and I told him that. Just stop. I started to get angry at him. I was no longer smiling or saying thank you, but I realized my biggest mistake now. I took the gifts. I took them because I don't have a lot of money, and the gifts were truly all the things I loved. I should have never accepted them. I started to confide in other coworkers how uncomfortable the whole situation made me. Most of them would reply, "He's single and really nice. He obviously likes you. I know he's older, but maybe you should give him a chance." I did not. With each unwanted gift, he would say, "I know you told me no gifts, but I just had to get this for you." On Valentine's Day of my third year working at this school, a giant gift basket was on my desk. I brought the entire thing back to him. I told him to take it back, that this was just too much. I guessed that it was about $150 for the entire thing. I told him to keep it. He said that if I took this, it would be the last gift, and he promised. I took it and made him repeat it again that this was the last one. I did not get the chance to test this. By the next month, the entire country shut down for COVID. I had to still be on campus to work, despite all the students being remote. In April, he came by my desk with a goodbye gift. He was quitting the job because they could not pay any of the cafeteria workers without students on campus. He was moving away. I cried with him, partly because I'm empathetic when others cry, and mostly from my relief. He was leaving. I never had to speak to him again. The next day, I had a friend request and a message from him on Facebook. I didn't respond or accept the request, but it did fill in some gaps in my knowledge. He had a car as his profile picture, and I remember the picture from all of my dating apps. That's why his demeanor changed. He saw me on all of the dating apps, and I had ignored him. For 8 months, I thought it was over. I didn't think about him. School started back up this past August with students back on campus. It was a relief not to worry about seeing him or finding random things on my desk. In October, my work phone started ringing. I was busy, so I didn't answer. After the person called about 5 times, I finally answered, thinking it was a very urgent parent. It was creepy troll Bill. He had to talk to me. He was in love with me. He spent every day thinking about me. And oh, by the way, he's married with grandchildren. Guess who was ready to leave his wife for me? Crazy troll Bill. He kept on my work phone for 45 minutes. I listened. I was nice. In hindsight, I have no idea why I kept talking to him. I told him I was not interested in him in that way. He begged to be friends. I said fine. He asked me to accept his friend request, and I did. He tried messaging me the next day, but I left it unread. 2 weeks later, I got a message from the front office that a representative from a company needs to talk to me. I rarely get sales reps coming in person, especially after the virus. I go up to the front, and it is the troll in a suit, large bags under his arms. The secretary thought he must have been a regular, because she recognized him but could not place him where. He asked me to come in and talk to him. But with the virus and safety rules, no one is allowed in the school. I go outside to the cold to talk to him. He explained that he just wanted to drop off a few gifts for me. He proceeds to take each item out of a bag. He tells me where he was, how it reminded him of me, and why I had to have it. He bought things for my kid, nowhere close to what he needs for his age. I'm panicking. My stomach hurts. I feel like I'm trapped, but outwardly, I am polite and nice. He asks to hold my hand while he reads the poetry he wrote for me, but I refuse and move as far away as I can manage. The poem he reads references a picture of me. He has the picture printed out. He said it is his favorite of mine. I'm 14 years old in the picture. How far back did he go on my Facebook? And this man used to work in high school. I tell him again that I do not have any interest in him. He says, "That's okay. I just need to be near you. I will take any attention that you are willing to give me. I just need to be in your life." He goes in for a hug. I try to get away, but I'm trapped between a tree and a bench. With his height, his face is buried in my breast, and his hand tries to sneak under my shirt. I can hear him trying to smell my hair. I am instantly sick. I sent him a Facebook message the moment I am back inside the school. This time, finally, I am not nice. I tell him, no more gifts. Period. None. This is a matter of consent. I do not consent to any more gifts. You say you care about me, but you do not respect my wishes. No more gifts. After he responded, and I was confident that he actually understood my words, I blocked him. I changed the setting on my profile to make it harder to find. In November, a box arrived at the school. A subscription box that will be sent every month. There isn't a name who it is from, but I know who sent it. I went to speak with the police on campus, but guess what? Not much they can do since I do not have proof that it is from Bill. I have called the company, but they cannot help because I am not the account holder. The school is aware of the situation. They will hopefully remember him if he tries to see me at work again. The day before my birthday, he called my work phone 4 times. On my birthday, he called the phone more than 5 times. I did not answer. Yesterday, the second package arrived at the school with my name and the school address. I hope the story is over, but it might not be. I make sure I am not followed when I leave work, but I do not have any clue what kind of car he drives. I have a special way I drive home now, where everything is single lanes, hopefully making it easier to see if I am followed. I always check the caller ID before I answer my work phone. I'm afraid of anyone who expresses an interest in me now because crushes are not cute anymore. I wait for more things to be delivered to the campus. I live in a constant state of panic, because what if he meant it? What if he tries to be a part of my life whether I like it or not?